It's been a busy few days for Kansas basketball. Let's see, since last Thursday, the program has delivered its response to the NCAA's Notice of Allegations, won the Big 12 championship, had Udoka Azubuike named Conference Player of the Year by the coaches, and is now on the verge of its most anticipated postseason in a few years. And we talk all about it on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast, with columnists Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. I'm your host, Blair Kirchhoff, and it is Monday, March 9th. March Madness has started, and it begins here with Sam and Vahe. Since the last time we talked, this has happened with Kansas basketball. They have responded to the NCAA, forcefully responded to the NCAA. The Jayhawks went down to Lubbock and beat Texas Tech to finish the regular season 17-1 and win the Big 12 by 2 games when it looked like they would be, when they were chasing Baylor all year long. Udoka Azubuike was named Big 12 Player of the Year by the coaches, and we're still waiting to hear the writers, the media, AP voting for that award. So it's been kind of an active few days in the world of Kansas basketball. Let's go back, since Jesse and I talked about this last week, but let me get your thoughts quickly on the NCAA, the response to the NCAA's Notice of Allegations. It was only 307 pages worth of a response. I thought, so poor Jesse Newell, who had to write the story on Thursday, gets it about 7 o'clock, and our deadline's getting earlier and earlier.
7:01.
Yeah, didn't have a lot of time to digest, but then he got the story up, and then he followed it up with some really good stuff. And there wasn't anything in there that surprised me in terms of the Kansas attitude toward the NCAA. It's just that this is just a little different approach than what we see most schools take when it comes to NCAA allegations.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is what you're referring to directly, and I don't know if this had anything to do with Kansas's tact here or whatever, but Missouri kind of showed that cooperation is maybe not as fruitful as it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, that you can cooperate and then just get punched in the face even harder. So, Kansas sent in a 307-page, basically written version of I
think we have to beep, but we can beep it.
Just grabbing their you-know-what and just saying, like, well, come on with it then. If you think this is what you got, then let's dance, And I don't think it's going to be I'm expecting Kansas to get some pretty heavy sanctions, but maybe they say screw it. If we're going down, let's go down our way.
I believe I read in the Kansas City Star that this was going from giving the middle finger to, I think, steel cage death match, or I can't remember how one columnist might have phrased that, but I thought that really spoke to it. I mean, there was no doubt left that they were going to be defiant, but this was even above and beyond what I expected, I think. I haven't digested all 307 pages. I've luckily had really good writers to read on that, you and Jesse. I like your point about the Missouri thing. Blair brought it up to me the other day, too, and it really is an interesting contrast. And I don't know how much it informed the way KU did it, but you have to think that's in the back of their mind, like, well, okay, being contrite and throwing yourselves at their feet doesn't seem to be the way to go. And maybe KU would have done it this way anyway.
Other schools have tried that besides Missouri to, spirit of cooperation, clean, self-imposed penalties.
I mean, that had been the culture for a long time. Is it if you bring yourself to us and tell us what you've done, we will be. And
it's shown leniency.
Yeah,
and it's worked.
Yeah,
sometimes it's worked.
I don't know when that stopped.
I don't know. Well, certainly the NCAA has evolved over the years in terms of its enforcement staff, and we're just, I don't know what period or mood the NCAA is in now, but there was a period of, they were kind of lenient with schools. I can remember famously Southern Cal football took the approach that Kansas is now taking, basically saying, the heck with you guys, we were right and you're wrong. And Mike Garrett, the old Chiefs running back, was the athletic director at USC, and the NCAA hammered Southern Cal for that, and
Reggie Bush.
Yes, and noted that part of their the lack of cooperation from Southern Cal at the time was noted.
Yeah.
So we're in a different world, different era, but it was just like I said, noticeable that Kansas came with guns blazing on this thing.
Let me ask this question, and maybe it's a nuance of this that I haven't really thought through or had a chance to absorb, but Kansas is obviously going to putting up its dukes. Is Kansas also not cooperating? Is that the same thing?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I think Kansas has said through its response that this is our hand. You know?
Yeah, I don't think there hasn't been anything said that makes me think they're not cooperating.
Right.
They're not cooperating with a smile.
Right. But it is an interesting distinction.
Yeah,
I mean, and again, I apologize for not being better versed in the nuances of it, but it's interesting to wonder how that might fit into this. Like, okay, you're putting up a fight. Maybe that's perceived differently than saying, we're not helping you, we're not working with you.
Well, and the cooperation would have been with the FBI and not the NCAA, since it's the FBI's case against Kansas, and they handed it over to the NCAA. Just in the last couple of weeks, Georgia Tech took itself out of the ACC tournament because of they're caught up in this. They took themselves out of the ACC tournament and self-imposed other measures, other penalties. So it doesn't sound like Kansas is interested in self-imposing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that'll be an option, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. The timeline is such that Kansas will get through this year's NCAA tournament, and weeks, maybe months will pass, and likely to have a decision, I think, in July or August. But we thought that of Missouri too. Remember last year that dragged on until November, and even putting into doubt whether if they were bowl eligible, if they became bowl eligible, would they, would there still be doubt about the appeal at the time?
By the way, you use the term self-imposed, and I can't help but think of the context here. I mean, I just keep thinking, that's self-imposing himself on this whole thing. I mean, that's what I take away from that when I think of that term now.
The other thing I thought about when you said about Georgia Tech, I'm like, Kansas should metaphorically take themselves out of the Big 12 tournament. But that's
right. Leave it at that.
A different issue. That's a whole different issue that maybe we'll talk about later.
Yeah, that we'll get to. As has become obvious, this whole thing has been a huge distraction for this Kansas basketball team.
Really
that's right. That just somehow finds a way to win every game. It has been an amazing season for KU. 28-3 in overall, 17-1 in Big 12 play, which is the best record, not the best record, but the most wins ever for a conference school. Baylor finished 15-3, and that was the most wins for a team to not win the Big 12. So they wrap up the regular season by going to Lubbock and playing a game that I think has become kind of typical of Kansas. Grind it out, play terrific defense, score enough, use the talent that other teams don't have, namely Azubuike in the middle. But he finished with 15 and 10, I think. And just beat a team that I think is heading to the NCAA tournament. Tech may be closer to the bubble now than they've been in a few weeks, but still, this has been a pretty impressive Kansas team season, even with the specter of NCAA trouble looming over them.
Yeah, no, they've been incredible. They didn't have, over the years you can get used to the KU rhythm of a season, where they have the dip in December where people lose their minds and, the season's over, and then they come back and they are number one seed. But they never had that. They lost to Villanova by a point when they kind of blew it at the end. They lost to Duke by 2?
Duke in the opener.
And then Baylor smacked them.
Early in the Big 12 season.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, literally flawless.
Never the back-to-back losses, right?
Yeah, right.
That's the late January, early February thing.
No, or the eye opener. How did they lose at Stillwater? How did they lose at Fort Worth? Sort of thing.
Against the best schedule, the nation's best schedule, they're 28-3. I don't think the Big 12 is like really great this year at all, but still 17-1. You kidding me? And I really think this is a distinction. I hope it makes sense. I don't think this is Bill Self's best team that he's had, but I think it might be his best chance at a championship, at least since 08. Just relative to the rest of college basketball, they are the best team. And I also think the specific strengths, that stuff will travel. That stuff will play through some nerves. You can get through a Sweet 16 game or whatever when you just defend like a mother, like they do. And they can put on the floor, Devon Dotson didn't make the all-defense team, right? But he led the league in steals.
Had more than Marcus Garrett.
Yeah, and Marcus Garrett did win Defensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. And if Marcus Garrett didn't exist, I think Azubuike would have won Defensive Player of the Year. And I think Ochai Agbaji is the long athlete, good defender, all that. I mean, they are all over the board, can just smother you. I think they can get through some games where maybe some nerves would have otherwise caught up with you.
You guys saw these teams all along much closer up. I wonder where this team rates defensively among Bill's teams at Kansas, just defensively. I mean, it has to be one of the top 2 or 3.
I think it is. They've had some really good ones. That team that went to the Final Four in 12 was really good with Robinson and Withy, right
and
around
Travis
the basket.
Relaford was their, he was their Marcus Garrett of that team.
Yeah.
Always put him on the better perimeter offensive player.
Yeah, and Tyshawn Taylor
was a long arm guard who, operated. He was their point guard. He and Elijah Johnson were their point guards, but they weren't point guards. I mean, they just they just
2 combo guards.
Right, combo guards who were good defensive players, and that was a. Unlike the 2018 team that got to the Final Four with shooters and a lot of great offense, right? Devontae Graham and Mikhailuk and Newman, Malik Newman, who was the MVP of the regional that year. No, this team 2 years later, and that does speak to Bill Self's incredible capacity to adapt, adjust, even not just from season to season, but within a season.
Right.
Playing David McCormick as much as he was early on, he really wanted to play 2 bigs. Mm-hmm. And Jesse, we keep referring to Jesse. I think he made a great point a few weeks ago. That benches clearing brawl against Kansas State, in which McCormick got a 2-game suspension, put him on the bench, and forced Bill Self to play 4 guards.
Yeah.
And change sort of a little bit of the dynamic of the team. And that's what he's been going with since, and it has worked out.
That is such a Bill Self thing, too, by the way. There's really ugly, some teams would have just kind of folded, and it turns out to be a good thing for him. You know what I mean? This FBI investigation, they're just going to give him an extra, you actually won the Big 12 last year. That was what our investigation was, Somehow it'll work out, it feels like.
It is totally par for the course, though. I think you're on it, and I think that's sort of part of the theme of the season, and something we've been talking about and thinking about is how much fuel he gets from these sort of things. Like, that is a classic swing right there.
It's crazy.
And what's wrong with this team and the chaos all around them, and now they're better than ever.
Yeah.
So Azubuike was named Big 12 Player of the Year. That's a discussion that we can have too. He is the player no one else has.
Yeah.
I mean, he is unique. He's going to lead the nation and maybe set an NCAA record for field goal percentage in a career at somewhere around 75%, but it's because all of his shots come within 3 feet of the basket,
sure.
and he dunks most of them. But should he be the best? Should he be deemed the best player in the conference?
I think so. I don't see what point eclipses the point you made first, which is that he's the guy nobody else has.
He is unique for sure, but I think. To me, it's either he or Devon Dotson, and I don't know. Kansas is certainly less when either one of those guys is off the floor. But I go back to the Kansas State game a couple of weeks ago when Azubuike hurt his ankle and missed a lot of that game, and Devon Dotson basically won that game by himself.
Yeah, if I was a coach, I would have voted for Dotson. But it's a different thing of like what I would have done versus like, do I have a problem with a certain thing? Like you can make a great case for Azubuike. He controls 3 feet around the basket on both ends, really. It's kind of funny, like one of the worst shooters in recent college basketball history is going to lead be the all-time field goal percentage leader, but he's just different. And he also, his rebounding numbers, he's averaging a double-double, but he gets rebounds that sometimes there's garbage rebounds. Sometimes a guy can average 8 or 9 rebounds and he's just kind of getting loose balls or whatever. Azubuike gets rebounds that other guys, just can't get. But maybe I have a positional bias on this, but I feel like Doak is he's dependent on, the screen, the play call, so he can roll and get the alley-oop. He's dependent on, people getting him the ball. Devon Dotson's the one that makes it go. And that K-State game, really was convincing for me. I just think he's their best player. I mean, Doak is like super unique. But I would have voted for Dotson, but it's not like Azubuike hadn't earned it, He had a great finish too.
He did.
What a great finish.
And you brought up
case, yeah.
You brought up Azubuike's rebounding. I think that's really improved. When he was a freshman, he wasn't getting boards. That he was getting out rebounded by guys that were smaller than he was. And that was like a problem. So how is a 7-footer not getting more boards? And I think that's come with his slimmed down body and his stamina has improved so much. And now he just is I think he's turned himself into I'm not an NBA draft person. I just don't know. I let others create those mock drafts, but I think he's turned himself into a useful NBA player.
Sure, yeah, I agree with that.
Not going to be an all-star, maybe not starter, but I think he'll have a nice long NBA career just based on what we've seen this year. So
how measurably different? I mean, we know his body looks quite a lot different than when he arrived. How do you guys know the measurement offhand? I mean, how many pounds? It's just almost looks like a different body type in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard anywhere from like 20 to 50 pounds.
Yeah,
difference.
Yeah.
I don't know where the truth is in that, but I know that he does look it, right? But more than that, he's more explosive. He's not quick. He's not like a quick, agile guy, but he is definitely more explosive, and on both ends, going for blocks and grabbing lobs and everything. And he's also I don't know how many minutes he's averaging. It's over 30, right? And
I don't know if it's over 30, but it's twice as much as what he was when he was starting as a younger player.
And he would not be capable of playing 30 Big 12 minutes as a freshman. He just wasn't in that kind of physical shape when he was 16 years old. What a chump. When he was a sophomore in high school.
That's a great caveat to drop in there.
All right, let's take a break, and we will continue with we'll expand it to some Big 12 talk when we get back. Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners. Unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Back with Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam Mellinger. We're talking college basketball, and it's Big 12 tournament week.
Hell yeah, it is.
Woo-hoo. So I'm trying to think. The first year that the tournament was at Sprint Center, I want to say was the 2008 season. I mean, the year Kansas went on to win the national championship. It had been in Oklahoma City and Dallas for about the 5 years before that, or some kind of combination of years. Actually went back to Oklahoma City for 1 year. Missouri ended up winning it like in 2009, right? The DeMauri Carroll team won it in 2009. And then it's been in Sprint Center permanently since 2010, so more than a decade. And I think we can agree it's the best place for the Big 12 tournament. Did you guys ever cover one of those Dallas or Oklahoma City events?
I covered Oklahoma City. I think, was it it must have been that year. It was a Mike Anderson year. Was that when the women's tournament was there too?
Yeah,
across the street, basically. Mm-hmm. And it just felt off kilter. I mean, it was neat. I'm sure there was a sense of just freshness to it from being there. But this, I mean, even when I was in St. Louis, this was always home for that tournament. You just knew it. It was the right vibe, the right fit. And this building's been perfect for it, right? It's a great building.
Yeah. I really like Oklahoma City.
I do too.
As a place for events like that. But it seems like Kansas City is Oklahoma City, but bigger and more convenient. There's no distance between the arena and what is it, Bricktown? Is that what they call it?
Right.
It's just you go across Grand, which they even shut off.
Yeah,
that's right. Right.
And it's just I think the crowds are louder. I don't know if the crowds are going to be louder this week, but I think in general the crowds are louder. It's just I think it's by far it seems to be not just consensus but unanimous. Right.
It is. The Big 12 goes through a bidding process to continue to award the event to Kansas City, and they go through a bidding process because they're obligated to do that. And they're the Big 12 is looking for good deals as well. I don't think they want any one city to be so comfortable. But anyway, it's the most obvious place. Hey, I go back to the whole idea of Sprint Center was. The Sprint Center exists because Kemper Arena wasn't good enough, and that's why the tournament left Kansas City to go to try out Dallas and Oklahoma City, and Kansas City responded with a $300 million building and another $500 million entertainment district across the street. It really did change the face of downtown, and I'm probably, it's too much of a stretch to say this, but I think it's because of college basketball. Kansas City was going to lose the Big 12 tournament. And so Kay Barnes and other city officials realized how much economic driver it was. So let's build a new arena. Let's pass the taxes, car rental tax and whatnot. Let's build a new arena. And the Power and Light District followed that. And we have a new downtown because of it, which is fantastic. And not only do we have a new downtown because of that, we have Sprint Center attracts other events, and we have NCAA events we've had not wrestling, volleyball, national figure skating, gymnastics here. Anyway, that's another show. We can talk about Sprint Center another time, but it is a little different, as you said, Sam. There might not be the number of fans here this week with the coronavirus.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
That's one of the factors. Also, Iowa State and Kansas State not being as good in men's basketball.
Yeah, and I don't know how you rank them, but coronavirus may end up being number one for people avoiding crowds and everything. But yeah, it was always looked like the Big 12 tournament. It's still great. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as great as it was when Mizzou was part of it. It's just flat not. And there are years where K-State and Iowa State make up for that, but this is hella not that year.
Nope.
And Kansas, sort of the de facto home team, really, at the Sprint Center, and they won the league pretty convincingly. And I don't know how much they care this week. And
how much should they care?
I don't think they should. I think if they win the tournament, I think something went wrong. I really do.
Listen, Jesse, again, to refer to Jesse, to tip our cap, he wrote about this in a pretty interesting way the other day. And to the point where, if I recall correctly, he asked Bill about the need to kind of bring down the minutes, if nothing else. And Bill wouldn't quite show his hand. And Jesse had a great anecdote in there about an exhibition tour where Bill's like, it doesn't matter if we win, and then he's like getting a technical foul.
Getting thrown out of the
doesn't even know what language he's speaking.
Right.
So Bill maybe can't help himself, but I do think Bill will be, he certainly has demonstrated he's cognizant of the upside of that. Now, the real question is, what is at stake? Nothing. Right?
Absolutely.
They have not just virtually nothing, really nothing.
No, yeah, they
literally nothing. They're going to be the overall number one seed for the NCAA tournament, and even if they lost in the first game and fell to the overall number two, the overall number one would then be Gonzaga, and they're going to be in the West. So that's the one, a region that Kansas wouldn't play in. So
I think they could literally stay in Lawrence and no show the tournament, and they'd be number one overall. I think they've earned it.
Self-quarantine.
That's right.
Hey, thank you. I was going to do that if you didn't. But go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, is that the right approach? Kansas has won 11 of the 23 Big 12 tournaments. They lost in the championship game last year to Iowa State. Nobody remembers that, but I remember because it was Iowa State. Iowa State is always the very best atmosphere games at Sprint Center have been Kansas, Iowa State,
Yep,
right?
That's true.
And except that, remember that K State final one year, pulling that team, that was a lot of fun as well. But look, Kansas is, it kind of runs contrary to your competitive nature to, to be less than what you are, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I think if Bill had his way, Christian Enaruna would play a lot of minutes this week.
Yeah.
And maybe Christian Brown would play a lot of minutes this week, and maybe Garrett with his foot, ankle, and Devon Dotson with his hip, and Azubuike with his ankle would not play as many minutes.
What if you did this? What if you sat Dotson, Garrett, Azubuike, not just your three best players, but those three guys have been carrying or have recently been through some sort of injury? What if you just sat those guys on Thursday and you figure if we can't beat whoever it's going to be without these guys, then screw it, then we're okay. And then instead of 3 games in 3 days, you're looking at just a back-to-back, which is a little bit more palatable. There's no chance Self will do this, but I just wonder if that might be a way, because I don't believe, I agree with what Newell wrote. I don't believe that Self can go into a game and just say, I'm only going to play these guys 20, 25 minutes. I think if that happens, those guys play 30, 35 minutes.
Right.
I just don't think he's capable of limiting that once the bullets start flying.
Let me flip that on you and think about it this way. I would never have thought of what you just said, and it won't happen, but it's interesting to think about. What if he played them Thursday and theoretically tried to hold the minutes back, but wouldn't play them Friday?
Yeah.
That way you're not playing back-to-back games.
Yeah.
On back-to-back days. And if they're in the championship game Saturday, by golly,
you go out and win it.
Go get them.
If you're in the championship game, if you're already got a game, you might as well go win it. Because then you're playing Saturday, which you already have one extra day. That game used to be on Sunday. So you got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at least. So 4 days without a game. Yeah. And also think about what if you only played them in the second half? What if you sat those guys for the entire first half? See what's what. You're down 8, you're tied, you're up 3, whatever. And then you go try and win. I don't know. But you can't, if they go through and Devon Dotson is averaging 36 minutes in 3 games in a row, something went wrong.
And limping off the court.
That just
can't go through the handshake line.
That cannot be the outcome.
But seldom does it ever work out like this where it's truly, literally nothing to be gained.
Nope.
And so that really is a sort of a...
That makes it a little bit. That makes it maybe a little bit different than the previous example.
Yeah.
Well, 2 things. Texas Tech lost its first game in the Big 12 tournament last year and took the national championship game to overtime. Yeah. But I cannot remember a year with Kansas an exit from the NCAA tournament short of the Final Four, which as a 1 seed, which in the Kansas world is a disappointing season. And thought back, boy, if they just didn't win the Big 12 tournament that year, or if they just didn't play 3 games in 3 days, that never seems to be the reason, because there is that period of rest. Once you get into the NCAA tournament, the rest is unbelievable. I mean, it's 3 or 4 days before you play your first game. It's a day of rest in between games, another 3 or 4, maybe 5 days. Mm-hmm. If you go from a Saturday to a Friday. So
and notably, you just brought up the 2008 tournament was the first one here, and Kansas won that, right?
They did.
They beat Texas in the blues.
Yes, it was until last year the first time they'd worn a blue uniform in a conference tournament.
Yeah, but I think I won't say but I tend to have a short memory with some of these things. Like that 2008 team was pretty deep. They had a lot of guys that could play on
Sharon Collins off the bench.
Right. This team, I'm just trying to think of a KU team in recent memory that not just relied on 3 guys as heavily as this one does, but not necessarily limping into this point of the season, but each of their last 3 games, I think they looked gassed for stretches. Look, they won, so it's what are we really talking about? But still, and this is just, and look, I'd feel differently if, getting to Saturday was the difference between a 1 or a 2, you know what I mean? But it's irrelevant. It just really is, other than a party. And I don't want to dismiss parties.
No,
those are important too.
Nor should you. But I'll tell you what, the whole this gets back to the whole notion of the value of a conference tournament to begin with.
Totally.
What are we doing? I mean, I think that's a show.
There's an interesting case to be made. It used to be the holiday tournament, right? To make it over Christmas,
right?
And that can be a bid, right? And then you play for the regular season. I don't know. I think there's a case to be made for that.
Wow, it's interesting thinking of it in terms of that being the bid at that time of year, though.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
For I think it was 4 years, the Big Eight had both, the holiday tournament and the postseason tournament. Then the coaches got together and said, "What are we doing? We're playing teams four times a year. That's when the holiday tournament went away." So, okay, hey Sam, Vahe, great catching up, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to producers and folks who helped put together this episode. That's Derek Donovan, Savannah Smith, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode of SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.